The release is one of the most important parts of the golf swing. If you get it right, it can lead to great ball striking. But if you get it wrong, it can lead to a lot of inconsistencies in terms of strike and dispersion. So in today's video, I'm going to run through the two main types of releases that we see and how to know which one is right for you. You do not want to miss this video. So when we are looking at the release pattern, I believe that there are two main types of releases. You have what we class as a body release, where the club face is a little bit more passive and we will see a lot more rotation and sort of the hand stay underneath the club. And then we have a second type of release where there's a lot more forearm rotation. You can call this more of a roll release. We'll see the forearms pass over each other, a little bit higher closure rate in terms of the club face. Now, what determines which release pattern you need? Well, it's all to do with club face. If you've got the toe a little bit more toe up to the sky, you are going to need a little bit more of a roll release, versus if you have the club face a little bit more pointing down to the ground, matching spine angle, you are going to want a little bit more of a body release or underhand throw release, passive hand release, whatever word you would like to describe it. Now, before we go into those release patterns into detail, I want to run through three keys that no matter which release type you have to have in place in order to have a successful release pattern. So the first key, no matter what release pattern you have, if you are going to be successful, is what we class as realignment. Now, what is realignment? Realignment is when the left arm, the lead arm and the club get back into one straight line. Now, we have measured this with a lot of tour pros and with different release styles, and we find that this realignment pattern always tends to happen around the lead ankle joint when the left arm and the club get back in one straight line. Now, if you take 1,000 amateurs who are struggling with their ball strike and you slow their swing down and you look at this realignment point, I would put money on the fact that nearly 70, 80, 90% of them would have that realignment point actually before or at impact. So one of the most important keys is having this realignment after impact, and to be more specific, we want to see the left arm and the club, or the lead arm and the club, get back in one straight line, roughly around the left ankle joint. Now, if we think about that, that's super important, because if we're getting back into a straight line here, that means if I bring my hands back to where they would be at impact, I would have some shaft lean. Key number two is having great width. Now, firstly, let's define what width is. Now, it doesn't matter what part of the swing we are talking about. Width is essentially how far away from our body is our hands. If they're very close, we don't have a lot of width. The further away they go, the more width we are going to have. Now, what's one of the most common follow-through positions you see? It's that sort of chicken wing look right there where the arms collapse. Everything's very narrow. It's very scoopy. Again, we've seen this on the driving range so many times. And the key thing to understand is right here is that this is a reaction. This is not necessarily the issue itself. Everything's a chain reaction to golf swing. So if this is out of position, then chances are something else has gone wrong earlier. Now, what do we see with the best players in the world, and why is it really important to achieve this great position? Well, we see them in the follow through have this amazing sort of extension to the arms. You can see the butt end of the grip is sort of pointing back at me. My belt buckle is pointing to the target. My chest is pointing to the target, and they have that great width. If I turn to this view and I do that same position, you can see how everything's worked through together. Now, if I have the great width over that side, chances are, again, like the realignment, my low point is going to be past the ball. Low point is where we make contact with the lowest point of our swing. That's going to be sort of the fattest part of your divot. That means that in order to achieve the low point pass, we must have had this ball, then ground contact, which is going to be so crucial for your release pattern. The third and final key to having a successful release pattern, no matter which one you have in your swing, is having a good hand path. Now, what determines a good hand path? Well, firstly, the golf swing is very much on a circle around our body, and that circle is also tilted because we are tilted forwards. Now, the center point of that circle is our bodies, is us. So, as we tend to do a swing, if I just stand straight up and down and you were to look at my hands, as I turn, my hands are obviously going to arc in, but as I come back into impact and through, you can see my hands start to arc back in. Now, if I was to take that same circle and tilt forwards inside the ball, just do a little turn, hands are arcing in, and then again, hands are arcing in. So what we want to be seeing is a subtle arc to the hands on the way through. Now, the issues that I tend to see is rather than having this sort of subtle arc on the way through, is you tend to find players actively try and throw their hands out to the right. And again, this is all sort of within certain margins, but when players do it excessively to the right, you will see that they start to get very disconnected. There's a lot of face rotation, face closure. You can see push shots, hook shots, and shanks from this position because everything's working away. And the other end of the scale is we see people exit the club very low and left inside, and ultimately from there, that's going to produce some slices, pulls, and it's going to be very hard to be consistent. So if I turn to this view, when we have a look at the release pattern, we just want to be seeing a subtle amount of arc to the hands on the way through. That's going to ensure that the club's working with our body, it's staying connected with our body, and we are getting a great follow through. So when it comes to knowing what release pattern is right for you, it's all to do with club face. Now, if you are that golfer where when you look at the shaft parallel position, you see your club face at 12 o'clock on the club face from your perspective as the golfer looking at this, or maybe more towards 1, you are going to need what we class as more of a roll release. Now, if you are the golfer that is more of a face down towards 11 o'clock position, you can see the club face is matching your spine angle a little bit more, you are going to need more of a passive release. Now, to make sure you're not wasting your time, what I want you to do is then skip ahead now to either the roll release, depending on where your club face is, or the passive release. I will timestamp them in the video, so then jump ahead and make sure you can get to the right release pattern for your swing. So you are a roll release player. Your club face is open, and this is exactly what we need to help you square the club face up. So let's just recap. Again, you are going to see that club face at 12 o'clock or maybe slightly open. Now, here's the thing. The more open you have that club face, the more active your forearms are going to need to be. Now, again, is this a bad thing? Some players might say it is, but I wouldn't. I would say that this is just matching up your golf swing. Yes, you can go down the route of trying to get that club face into a squarer position in that point. 2 ways you can do it. You can strengthen your grip. So for a right-handed golfer, that's moving your hands more round to the right. That naturally is going to close your club face a little bit more, a little bit faster. Or the second way is by adding what we class some wrist flexion to the lead wrist. That's where you bow that wrist like so. If I add some flexion, you can see how that gets that face pointing down to the ground. Now, for some golfers, they just simply don't want to do that. And that's absolutely fine. The golf swing is about matchups. But just understand, when you look at your swing in slow motion, the more we see that club from toe up to even more back this way behind us, the more you are going to have to be active with your forearms. But again, a great tour player, Will Zalatoris, he does this exactly. Very active with his forearms, but he's able to square the club face up. Now, because you are a roll release player, what do we want to be seeing? Well, let's just firstly isolate the right hand. I'm just going to pop the club down behind me. If I was a roll release player, at this sort of shaft parallel position right here, you would see my palm would be either on the club, on the side of the club, or slightly underneath. So, if you're on the side of the club, just dead there, you know, your thumb's pointing straight up to the sky right there, you want to be feeling like as you come through, you match it on the other side. So as if I'm shaking hands with somebody. If your hand is a little bit more under the club, you are going to want to feel like on the way through, your hand is then a little bit more over the club. And again, this is just exaggerating the matchups depending on where you are at that shaft parallel position. So again, let me grab the club now. If I am somebody who has my right palm on the side of the club at this position, toe straight up to the sky, I want to be feeling like it's on the side on the way through. And as you can see there, that toe is pointing straight up to the sky. If you are somebody who has it a little bit more underneath, now the club face is more at 1 o'clock, you are going to want to feel like you actually roll it over so the club face is a little bit more towards that 11 o'clock position. Let me demonstrate it from this side. Again, palm on the side, palm on the side. Palm under, so a little bit more excessively open, palm over. So you can see we're just matching it up. The severity of your open club face is going to determine the severity of how much roll release you need. Now, a second way of thinking of this, and I love this analogy, and this is again something you can maybe do in turn with the right hand, is focusing on the thumbs. You want to be feeling like as you sort of swing through, you can get both of your thumbs pointing straight down towards the target. So you want to be feeling like you can get that little bit more face rotation. My thumbs are pointing down to the target. Now, how do you practice this? Well, like anything with the release, we got to start with baby steps. So what I want you to do is some half swings and literally some pitch shots. That's all you got. So I have a 9-iron here, a little bit of loft, but a little bit of length as well. All I'm going to do is what I class as this roll release, because you are a roll release player, and we are going to be focusing on just doing a little half shot, trying to hit that amazing follow through position. Now, when you do hit this shot, the key that I want you to have is that you just pause and hold this follow through position. We want to see good width, good rotation, thumbs pointing down, and obviously that club face, depending on if you need it toe up or maybe a little bit more excessively rolled, we want to make sure it's in a good spot. So let me just demonstrate that right now. I'll do a rehearsal swing. So I'm going to imagine this is a little bit more excessively open, so more towards the 1 o'clock, hand more over. More towards the 1 o'clock there, hand more over. And you can see, we're going to see exactly how far this goes. So as I do this, open, a little bit of a roll release. And as you can see, pretty straight, flew no more than 50 yards. And again, a nice solid shot. So you're that golfer that has now the club face in what we class as a square to slightly closed position. Now again, what does that mean? Well, square is where the club face in this position is matching our spine angle. Slightly closed is maybe when it's pointing just a little bit more excessively down to the ground. So your release pattern is going to be different. It is going to be what we class as more of a body release slash an underhand throw. I love the analogy of an underhand throw. Now, why is an underhand throw release really important for you? Well, if you think about face rotation, you already have that club face in a slightly close to square position. If I now rolled it, you would see that I would get that face excessively closed on the way through. So what you actually need is a little bit more of an underhand throw. Now what I want to do is just freeze frame on my right palm. If I'm in this position here, my club face is pointing more down to the ground, my palm is also pointing more down to the ground. So if I drop the club, I take my palm and I point it down to the ground and I push and turn. Where does my palm now go? It points to the sky, right? Well, that's because that is the natural movement the hand wants to do. In this position, it doesn't want to do that. If it's open here, yes, it wants to release over. But if your palm is down to the ground, it wants to release back and up. And this is why we class it as an underhand throw. So, with that in mind, grab the club and just do a couple of sensations where you feel like you're doing a bit more of an underhand throw. And you can see we're still recocking the club. It's not like we're just sort of scooping at it and going this way. We are still recocking the club, but the right hand is staying a little bit more under the shaft and we are having less face rotation. So if I turn to the down the line view and I go, right, I'm going to go right palm points down to the ground, right palm points more to the sky. You can see as I do that, I'm starting to feel a little bit more of this underhand throw. Now, the second thing you'll see with your sort of release pattern is you might get a little bit more rotation. So in these, because you have the face more down, you can start to rotate more, and this is going to help you apply some shaft lean and also help you have the room to where you can then underhand throw it. Now, how can you train this? Well, easiest way is, again, just like the other release pattern, half shots. I love to slow things down. I have a 9-iron here. We're just going to do some little half swings and we're going to focus on hitting that good position. Now, again, for you, we want to be seeing as we come through, it's body's turning. So we've got everything pointing towards the target. Right hand's going to be a little bit more under the club. And I do not want you to feel like you are holding this off. I do not want a hold release. Why? Because firstly, we're not going to realign. And secondly, it's going to be very hard to generate speed. Allow that club to overtake, allow it to have that underhand throw so then you can still have a lot of speed in this motion. So let me give it a go for you right here. You're going to see the ball flight. Hopefully I hit a straight one. This is going to be first take, so trust me, hopefully it's a straight one. We are going to be feeling like as we come through, we got some rotation and we got that right hand sort of cocking underneath, pointing more back at us. So let's take a look at this one right here. Again, club face down. And there, you can see a little bit of a block, hit it slightly out the toe, but not too bad right there. That flew probably about 110 yards. It's crucial you get the right release pattern, and if you do get it right, it's gonna massively help you improve your game. Hopefully you've enjoyed today's video, and I hope to see you back here soon.